3 years ago, homes in America were selling before the sign hit the yard. 50,000 over asking price, accepted the same day, no inspection, no questions. Today, those same cities have homes sitting on the market for 4 months with no offers, while sellers watch their neighbor's house sell for 100,000 less than what they paid. These are 10 cities where home prices dropped up to 28%, and the data says they are still falling. Number 10, Tampa. Search Tampa, Florida on Google Maps, and you will find one of the fastest growing cities of the pandemic era sitting on Tampa Bay with a population of over 400,000 in the city and nearly 3.3 million in the metro. Between 2020 and 2022, Tampa home prices exploded as remote workers from New York, New Jersey, and the Northeast flooded into Florida chasing sunshine and no state income tax. Prices went up so fast that locals who had lived here for decades suddenly could not afford to buy in their own neighborhoods. Now the correction has arrived and mid-tier home prices have dropped roughly 8 to 10% from their 2022 peak, with homes sitting on the market longer than they have in years. But here's what nobody tells you about Tampa. The price drop is only part of the story, because home insurance is the silent killer that is making the math even worse. Florida homeowners insurance has doubled and in some cases tripled since 2022, with some Tampa homeowners paying $5,000 to $8,000 a year just to insure a modest home. So even though the purchase price went down, the total monthly cost of owning a home in Tampa has not dropped nearly as much as the headlines suggest, because your insurance bill ate the savings. Picture this: you find a home in Tampa listed $40,000 below what it sold for in 2022, and you think you are getting a deal until you see the insurance quote and realize you are paying the same monthly amount as the person who bought at the peak. Tampa's correction is real, but it is a correction with an asterisk. If insurance is eating the deals in Tampa, the next city has a different problem, because nobody wants to move there anymore. Subscribe, because if you own a home in any of these cities, you need the rest of this list. Number 9, Denver. Search Denver, Colorado on Google Maps and you will find it sitting at the base of the Rocky Mountains at 5,280 feet above sea level, which is why they call it the Mile High City. Denver was one of the hottest housing markets in America during the pandemic, with home prices climbing past $600,000 in many neighborhoods as tech workers and remote employees discovered they could live near the mountains and ski slopes instead of sitting in a cubicle in San Francisco. But that wave has slowed dramatically, and home prices have now dropped roughly 10 to 12% from their 2022 peak, with inventory climbing and homes taking longer to sell than at any point since the pandemic began. Here is what nobody tells you: Denver hit an affordability wall that many buyers simply cannot climb over. The median home price is still over $500,000 in most desirable neighborhoods, and when you combine that with mortgage rates in the mid 6% range and property taxes and insurance, the monthly payment on a median Denver home is more than many households can handle. Buyers did not disappear from Denver because they stopped wanting to live here. They disappeared because they ran out of money. The people who drove prices up during the pandemic often had California equity or tech salaries that no longer apply, and the local buyers who actually live and work in Denver cannot compete at these price levels even after a 10% correction. Denver is correcting, but it is correcting from such a high peak that the prices still feel unreachable for most people, which is the cruelest kind of drop because it happened and it still was not enough. From a mile-high city to a city where luxury hit a wall. Number 8, Naples. Search Naples, Florida on Google Maps and you will find it on the southwest Gulf Coast of Florida, one of the wealthiest small cities in America, where median home prices reached absurd levels during the pandemic, as wealthy buyers from the Northeast treated it like their personal escape plan. Home prices in Naples have dropped roughly 10% from their peak, and the correction is accelerating, with Naples ranking as the third biggest one-year price decline among the top 100 metro areas in the latest Smart Asset study. Here is what nobody tells you about Naples. The insurance crisis hitting Florida is hitting Naples especially hard because it is a coastal city in a hurricane zone, which means the same insurance problems crushing Tampa are even more intense here. Some Naples homeowners are seeing insurance quotes of $10,000 to $15,000 a year on homes that already cost $500,000 or more, and when you add that to rising property taxes and HOA fees that have jumped because of new Florida condo safety laws, the total cost of owning a home in Naples has gone up even as the sticker price has gone down. A home that dropped $50,000 in price but added $5,000 a year in insurance did not actually get cheaper. It just shifted where the money goes, from luxury correction to a city where the condos are in crisis. Number 7, St. Petersburg. Search St. Petersburg, Florida on Google Maps, right across the bay from Tampa on the western coast of Florida. St. Petersburg was another pandemic darling that attracted remote workers and retirees with its waterfront, art scene, and walkable downtown. Home prices have dropped over 10% from their peak, with St. Petersburg Petersburg ranking as the second biggest one-year decline in the entire country, according to Smart Assets' 2026 study. But the real story here is the condo market, which is collapsing under the weight of Florida's new building safety laws passed after the Surfside condo collapse in 2021 that killed 98 people. Those laws now require older condo buildings to complete expensive structural inspections and fund massive reserves for future repairs, which means condo associations are hitting owners with special assessments of $50,000 to $100,000 or more per unit. Some owners cannot afford it and are selling at a loss. Some buildings cannot find buyers at any price because nobody wants to purchase a condo knowing a six-figure assessment could arrive any month. Here is what nobody tells you. The condo crisis in St. Petersburg is dragging down the entire housing market because when condos sell for 30% less than they did 2 years ago, that pulls comparable single-family home values down with them. St. Petersburg is not just correcting from the pandemic peak, it is being restructured by a law that nobody saw coming. From a condo crisis to a desert city that overheated in more ways than one. Number 6. Phoenix. Search Phoenix, Arizona on Google Maps and you will find the 5th largest city in America sprawling across the Sonoran Desert, where temperatures regularly hit 115 degrees in summer. Phoenix home prices exploded by roughly 60% between mid-2020 and mid-2022, which was one of the largest price increases of any major American city during the pandemic. That explosion has now reversed, with prices dropping roughly 12 to 15% from their peak as the wave of Californians who drove the market has slowed to a trickle. Here is what nobody tells you about Phoenix. The heat is becoming a financial problem, not just a comfort problem, because extreme heat is now factoring into insurance costs, energy bills that run $400 to $600 a month in summer, and a growing concern among buyers about long-term livability in a city where outdoor temperatures can literally kill you. The other factor is water, because Phoenix depends on the Colorado River and Lake Mead, and both are under historic stress. Buyers who 5 years ago did not think twice about the desert are now asking questions about whether this city has a sustainable water supply for the next 30 years, which is exactly the length of the mortgage they are being asked to sign. Phoenix prices are falling because the math that made it attractive during the pandemic, cheap compared to California, has been eroded by rising insurance, brutal utility costs, and a water question that has no comfortable answer. From desert heat to a city that rain will not stop ruining. Number 5. Portland. Search Portland, Oregon on Google Maps and you will find it in the Pacific Northwest, where the Willamette River meets the Columbia, and rain falls more days than it does not. Portland was a darling of the 2000s, with a reputation for craft beer, coffee culture, and livability that attracted young professionals from across the country. Home prices have dropped roughly 15 to 18% from their 2022 peak, making Portland one of the steepest corrections among major West Coast cities. Here is what nobody tells you. Portland's drop is driven by perception as much as economics, because the city became a national symbol of urban disorder during 2020, with headlines about protests, homelessness, and property crime that scared buyers away, even though many neighborhoods remained perfectly livable. The perception stuck, and remote workers who might have chosen Portland in 2019 chose Boise or Bend instead. Downtown commercial vacancies are among the highest in the country, and the hollowed-out core has created a ripple effect on nearby residential values. Portland is a city where the housing correction is as much about reputation as it is about interest rates, and that makes recovery harder because you cannot fix a perception problem with a rate cut. From perception problems to a city that a hurricane literally broke. Number 4. Cape Coral. Search Cape Coral, Florida on Google Maps and you will find it on the Gulf Coast of Southwest Florida, just across the river from Fort Myers, with over 200 miles of navigable canals, making it one of the most canal-rich cities on Earth. Cape Coral home prices have dropped roughly 20% from their 2022 peak, which is one of the largest corrections in the entire state of Florida. Hurricane Ian made landfall near Cape Coral in September 2022, causing catastrophic damage, and while the city has rebuilt, the insurance market has not recovered. Some Cape Coral homeowners have seen their insurance policies canceled entirely, with replacement coverage costing 3 to 4 times what they paid before the storm. Here is what nobody tells you. Many Cape Coral homes are in flood zones that were not previously designated as high risk, which means homeowners who never needed flood insurance before are now required to carry it at costs that can exceed $3,000 a year on top of their already inflated homeowners insurance insurance. The combination of a 20% price drop, doubled insurance, mandatory flood coverage, and the memory of a Category 4 hurricane has turned Cape Coral from a pandemic boomtown into one of the most cautionary tales in American real estate, from hurricane damage to a city losing people faster than it can keep the lights on. Number 3. New Orleans. Search New Orleans, Louisiana on Google Maps and you will find one of the most culturally rich cities in America, sitting below sea level between the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain. Home prices in New Orleans have dropped roughly 19% from their peak, making it the third largest correction among major American cities tracked by Wolf Street. Here is what nobody tells you. The insurance crisis in New Orleans is worse than Florida because insurance companies are not just raising rates in Louisiana, they are leaving the state entirely. Multiple major insurers have pulled out of Louisiana in the past 2 years, leaving homeowners scrambling for coverage from smaller companies at dramatically higher prices. Some neighborhoods in New Orleans have seen insurance costs quadruple since 2020. Combine that with a city that has been losing population for years, an economy heavily dependent on tourism, and a geography that guarantees flooding risk, and you have a housing market where prices are falling because the total cost of ownership has become something that many residents simply cannot sustain. People love New Orleans for its food and music and culture, but love does not pay an insurance bill that went from $2,000 to $8,000 in 3 years. From insurance exodus to a city where tech money left and crime moved in. Number 2. Oakland. Search Oakland, California on Google Maps, right across the bay from San Francisco. Oakland home prices have dropped roughly 25% from their 2022 peak, making it the largest correction of any major California city and the second largest in the entire country. Here is what nobody tells you about Oakland. The drop is being driven by 3 forces hitting at the same time. First is the tech layoff wave that eliminated thousands of high-paying Bay Area jobs between 2022 and 2024, removing buyers who could afford $800,000 homes. Second is the remote work shift that allowed the tech workers who kept their jobs to move to cheaper cities like Sacramento, Reno, or Boise instead of paying Bay Area prices. Third is the crime and safety perception that has dominated national headlines, with videos of retail theft, car break-ins, and business closures going viral and scaring away potential buyers who might have overlooked those issues when the market was hot, but will not overlook them now that prices are falling and they have options elsewhere. Oakland went from being the affordable alternative to San Francisco to being the cautionary tale about what happens when the 3 pillars of a housing market, jobs, demand, and perception, all crack at the same time. And now the number 1 city where home prices have dropped more than anywhere else in America. Number 1. Austin. Search Austin, Texas on Google Maps and you will find the capital of Texas sitting on the Colorado River in the heart of the hill country with a metro population of over 2.3 million people. Austin is the single largest housing correction of any major metro area in America. Home prices peaked at a median of $550,000 in 2022 after 2 consecutive years of explosive growth that saw prices surge over 40% in just 24 months. Since that peak, prices have dropped roughly $110,000 to around $440,000 as of April 2026, which is a decline of approximately 20 to 24% depending on which data source you use, and some trackers show the correction approaching 28% when measured from the absolute peak to the lowest recent readings. This is the 4th consecutive year of price declines in Austin, the longest sustained correction in the city's modern real estate history. Inventory has climbed to 6.5 months of supply with over 10,000 active listings across the metro. Homes are sitting on the market for an average of 85 to 106 days. Redfin named Austin the slowest housing market among the 50 most populous metros, with 128% more sellers than buyers. Here is what nobody tells you. Austin overbuilt during the boom. New construction flooded the market as builders raced to meet demand from remote workers moving from California and New York. But when mortgage rates jumped from 3% to nearly 7%, that demand evaporated and the supply kept coming. Now, sellers are competing not just with each other, but with builders offering brand new homes with rate buydowns and closing cost credits that make resale homes even harder to sell. More than half of all Austin listings have taken a price cut. Picture this: you bought a home in Austin in the spring of 2022 for $550,000 because everyone said Austin was the future and prices would never come down. 3 years later, your neighbor's identical home just sold for $440,000. You lost $110,000 on paper in a city that was supposed to only go up. That is not a market correction. That is a reality check for everyone who believed that any American city was immune to gravity. Austin is still a great city with strong employers, investors, a growing population, and long-term fundamentals that will eventually stabilize prices. But right now, it is the single largest proof that what goes up in real estate does in fact come down, and sometimes it comes down hard and stays down for years. 10 cities and one pattern that should concern every homeowner in America. The pandemic sent prices to levels that local incomes could never support, and now gravity is doing what gravity always does. Insurance crises in Florida, perception problems in Portland, tech layoffs in Oakland, and historic oversupply in Austin are all different stories, but they all end the same way, which is with prices coming back down to meet the reality of what people can actually afford to pay. If you bought at the peak, these numbers are painful. If you have been waiting on the sidelines, these numbers might be your opportunity. Either way, the data is clear. 27 out of 33 major cities tracked by Wolf Street are below their peak prices, and the corrections are not over yet. Which city surprised you the most? Are you in one of these markets right now? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe because we track housing data like this every single week. See you in the next one.